All right, we're gonna get started with intros and stuff. I'm just trying to pull up the PowerPoint right now. All right, so peace everybody. My name is Darren. I'm one of the captains for the LifeCam Census team. Today we're hosting our weekly webinar session on the Census and Politics. And we have a special guest, which is Mr. Senator Leroy Comrie. Could you please introduce yourself and talk about your position and what you do for the community, and kind of distinguish a little bit, because we have a lot of youth on the phone, the senator and congressional position, to kind of distinguish them a little bit, just so everyone gets understanding, because we're going to be talking a lot about congressional officials and things like that.
Yeah, hi. I'm Leroy Comrie. I've been in the New York State Senate since 2014. I'm a former city council member representing the Southeast Queens area. You see the locations that we cover within my Senate district. I've been in the New York State Senate since 2015, and I serve as the chair of the Corporations, Authorities, and Commissions Committee, which has oversight of the Port Authority, which are the airports, the Thruway Authority, all of the major authorities in the city, including the MTA, and it has oversights of all of the corporations within New York City to make sure that they're following their corporate responsibilities, and also all of the commissions that are created by the state. I am one of 63 New York State senators. We go to Albany and we do our legislation in Albany. That's the distinction from the state and federal level. I want to thank LifeCamp for putting this event together. And I hope that I hope that all of you will make sure that you stand up as census leaders to make sure that all of your friends and family, all of the people that you encounter, understand that the census is important to ensure that we are able to get funds from the federal government. And I'll leave it there because I think we need to talk about the fact that, right now we need to understand, especially with the pandemic, and anyone should understand that clearly the pandemic has shown that we are under-resourced in New York State, and a lot of it is due to the fact that has been a traditional severe undercount in the states, and especially in the blue states regarding the census. It's important that we increase the numbers right now in Southeast Queens. The numbers are under 30% response rate to the census, and it's truly tied to how we obtain our federal dollars. Um, Mitch McConnell, as you might have heard, has already said that who is the um, United States Senator and the leader of the United States Senate that meets in Washington, D.C., is trying to do everything he can to ensure that states do not get money, especially blue states or states that are voting primarily democratically. So it's important that we do everything we can to make sure that we have a full count for people from New York State, so that we can at least justify the proper amount of money that we get for our communities. I'll give you an example, two clear examples. Number one, because of the undercount, even though we have more people that are supposed to be, that are actually here than is already being responded to, we have an undercount in hospital beds, Right now, we only have one hospital in the area, the Jamaica Hospital, and um, Queens Hospital is not located in Southeast Queens, and it's even a stretch to say that Jamaica Hospital is located in Southeast Queens. We have a major need for more hospital services in this community. Most people now go out to LIJ or to Franklin, to Northwell Hospital System to get treated if they're mobile. If they're not mobile, they're stuck with having to go to Jamaica Hospital for trauma, which we already know is overcrowded, and we know that Life Camp has been trying to work with Jamaica Hospital because of their physical presence. It's almost impossible for people to work at Jamaica Hospital in a positive interaction. So it's important that we get more hospital beds built in Queens. The schools also, we don't have, because we don't have statistics to warrant it, we're not getting schools built in our community. But we know that there are people that are living 2 and 3 in a house that are not being counted. And we need to get to those folks to understand that they will not be penalized. They will not be, no one will look for them if they get counted, but it's important that they are counted. So those are two of the major reasons why we need to make sure that everyone participates this year in the census count. I'll stop there.
Thank you so much. So you basically gave a great overview about what the census is and why it's important. Some of the things we can use it for in our community is like the more hospitals we have and things like that. And it's really showing how much we need the resources right now in a time of crisis. For the sake of the topic of the webinar, I'm gonna just go ahead and define, because we're talking about census and politics, we'll start with politics, which is the activities associated with the governance of a country or other area, especially the debate or conflict among individuals or parties having or hoping to achieve power. One of the basic definitions I have from the census is just basically like, you know, who gets what and out of a system and basically in the political realm. So what you're advocating for, what you want, who receives what, and things like that. And the census, as he discussed earlier, is a count of everybody in the United States within the 5 US territories, and is conducted every 10 years. It's very quick and simple. It's 10 minutes, less than 10 questions, and it counts for the next 10 years. So that kind of explains its relevance today. And you can fill out the census today at my2020census.gov. Just to touch on a little more what he said, the census data is basically used for congressional representation, which we're going to break down a little bit later. It's used for the allocation of hundreds of billions of federal funds, and it provides key demographics for the community, so the public. So they have access to that information and they can see how their communities are changing and what they can work on advocating for. Just 2 things really quick. The census is in the Constitution. Article 1, Section 2, that mandates that apportionment, which is something else we're going to talk about, of representatives among the states must be carried out every 10 years. And it's in the US Code, which basically under Title 13, it protects your information. Nobody can disclose your information or give it out to anybody else, or else they will be subject to a fine and possibly fine up to $250,000, and also maybe up to 5 years in prison or both. So, Mr. Comrie, Senator Comrie, sorry, can you kind of speak more to about how the census impacts states? Like we have all these state and citywide initiatives encouraging them to outreach and get census funding for their communities, but how does census funding specifically trickle down to states and cities?
Again, the census is statistical. It counts how many people actually, it's the official count for how many people live in the state of New York. So everything gets done through analytics, as you know now. Everything gets done through numbers. It's the most recent example of this is how the stimulus funds from the federal government and how COVID funds have been misallocated, with New York getting less money than other parts of the country, even though we have more cases. The census is how we stand up for ourselves, and how we've, you know, how they do the analytics and also the aggregate data for the state for the next 10 years. We have to make sure that we fill out the census, because in practice, New York already gets less in federal assistance than other states, and certainly less in proportion to the amount of taxes that people pay out to the federal government. And in practice, this means that, again, as I was saying, we get less money to support our institutions, less money for public transportation, less money for public housing investment. It's a severe undercount will truly harm us in critical ways in the terms of receiving money from the federal government. If, to put it in, if we have, just to use basic numbers, if we truly have 3,000 people that live in a particular area and only 200 fill out the census, we're only going to get money for 200 people. We actually have 3,000 people in that area, so that there's no way to get that federal money, because only the 200 people have been counted. And it creates a big gap in the ability to provide services to the 3,000 people that actually live there. And it's been exacerbated that our communities have been undercounted for decades. In 1964, there were 41 congressional members, federal Congress people from New York State. Now we're down to 27, and we could lose 2 more if we don't have a full count. It's important that we are counted. If you own a cell phone, if you're living in New York City, if you're living in New York State, you need to get counted. It's important to be able to get the resources that we need in order to survive as a state. And we're at a critical point right now where if we don't increase our numbers, we're going to lose the ability to have senior elected officials stay in place. We're going to lose what we need to get the money for public housing. As you know, just South Jamaica housing, Baisley housing needs money. But if we're having a severe undercount to the state won't get the full amount of money that we deserve, because to resolve the issues that we need to resolve.
Thank you. All right, yeah. So like you said, it breaks down further into things like our highways, our roads, our hospitals, public schools, things like that affect us every day. So the census isn't just for higher ups or government officials, it trickles down to your community. So that's why it's so important. The federal funding actually goes straight into your states and your cities and your local districts and things like that.
Right, but if we don't get our full amount of money to match the actual amount of people here, if just to use a fake number, if New York is only now going to get entitled to $2 trillion because we have a severe undercount where we actually need $4 trillion, we'll never be able to catch up. We'll never be able to adequately fund the schools, which, as you all know now, are not adequately funded. We'll never be able to build the extra hospitals because we can't have enough money to do all the things we need to do.
Next, a citizen question. So do you have any familiarity with the Citizenship Question, or be able to elaborate on?
Yeah, the Citizenship Question was an attempt by the Republican majority at the time to disincentivize people from filling out the census form. It was blocked, fortunately, by the Supreme Court, and it's not on the form. So you can declare your nationality. You should declare your nationality as a point of pride, but you don't have to declare whether or not you're a citizen.
So thank you. That's a point of emphasis. It's a concern for a lot of people. So this question is not on the census and was blocked, like you said, by the Supreme Court.
Right.
So
but unfortunately, the misinformation is still rampant. Folks seem to take a negative and turn that into reality. And even though it's been blocked and it's not going to appear on the form, the rumor mill and the fear mongering that it has amped up has created a pandemic in a way, where people are just believe that they're going to be tracked You know, and again, like I want to say, everybody has a cell phone. You're being tracked anyway. You know, if you have if you work, shop, or live in this country, folks know exactly what you're doing. So, you know, but the by law, as you said earlier, no one can use your census information to follow up with you.
Right. Right. So I know some of this outreach workers, when we reached out, that was a big thing, and the fear mongering is real because we've seen it. So people are legitimately scared about certain things regarding the census. So we have to make it a point of emphasis that the citizen questionship is not a requirement for you to fill out the census. You must be counted if you reside in the United States,
Right.
whether you're a legal citizen or not. Um, all right, so really quick about apportionment, which is basically the division of 435 House of Representatives seats, which is fairly flexible. In certain cases, I've heard that it has gone up, but for the most part, it's stable at 435 members. Um, the House of Representatives are split up. There's average 710,767 people per each representative. So each of these states are broken up and given a certain amount of House of Representatives, which represent individual districts in our local communities. The amount of congressional seats a state has depends on how many electoral votes one gets in a presidential election. So there you go. It has, it's extremely important to be counted because now you're going to get more House of Reps and you're going to have more of a say in the presidential election when it comes to the electoral college.
Right. And, you know, as I said earlier, New York State has been losing congressional representatives for the last 40 years. In the 60s, we had 41 federal congressional representatives. Now we have 27 because there's been an undercount. There are, and so, you know, we truly need to get those numbers. We need to hold on to our 27 at least. You know, other states don't hesitate to fill out the census because they know it'll bring them additional power by getting them more congressional representatives if the numbers get skewed inappropriately. So, you know, that's how states like Arkansas and Wichita and Indiana, you know, they don't hesitate to fill out the census forms. And if you look, their numbers are much higher than New York's response rate. We can't afford to lose any more congressional members. Or right now, the congressman for the 5th Congressional District, Gregory Meeks, represents an area all the way from practically Brooklyn, all of the Rockaway to Long Island. It's way more than, you know, because they claim that we only have 710,000 people in that area. Think about it. From from here to the Queens Brooklyn border, from the Brooklyn border to all the way out to the Rockaways and half of the Rockaways, and then he goes all the way to practically Hempstead, you know, taking in the communities of Elmont and Valley Stream and parts of, what is it, I guess West Hempstead he takes in. That's a huge swath of area that has way more than 710,000 people in it. But because we're undercounted, that's what they're telling us that he has to represent. You know, it's a huge area. It makes a lot of difficulties because now you have to represent people from Long Island and Queens who have different needs, different resource needs, different emphasis on what their concerns are, and it makes it more difficult to be an effective representative to do that. He has been effective. I want to give him credit. He's been working with us immensely, especially during this time with the pandemic and COVID. We talk almost every day in a group of elected officials about how to coordinate our resources to ensure that Southeast Queens can be properly represented.
Most of us live in New York, so all of us live in New York, so we know that it's a big place. So we definitely need it to be broken down further, and we need more representatives for each community because I can tell, like I think a lot of us, or at least some of us, don't know exactly who our congressional officials are or have never met them, and that should be more. We should have more familiarity with a congressional official that represents specifically your neighborhoods. That way, you know, it's more of a personalized relationship rather than, you know, they have to go from Brooklyn to Long Island to Queens. So we're not engaged with them as much. But this chart basically is downloaded from census data from the 2010 census, which basically shows us how many seats we lost. Like Mr. Comrie said,